Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are going to be making a unicorn. It's been quite a while since I've made anything furry. I know I made the owlbear a little bit ago, but I've been kind of wanting to use a bit more of my fur fabric because I have a lot of it. So I'm going to try and throw in every now and again a furred creature. Even though I love working with sequins and different things like that, I need to use my fur fabric for something. Anyway, so today we are going to be doing a unicorn, so let's get started. Okay guys, the first thing that we're going to work on today is going to be the clay. Now I need the horn done before I get started on the face, so I figured I'd do that first and then get the hooves done and then we can start on the face. So right now I have a piece of wire, it's kind of wrapped onto itself, and this is going to be the middle support for our horn. That way there's a little bit more strength to it, because if we made this just out of clay it'd be very fragile. Now I want to have a very simple spiral unicorn horn design, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take 2 strips of clay and I'm going to be tapering off one end of each. So basically it starts off really thick and then it gets really thin. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the thicker sides of our strips of clay and we're going to put these at the base of our wire. We're then going to take our 2 strips of clay and we're going to start twisting them together around our wire. You'll want to twist them at the same time, that way you get an even spiral. And we're just going to do this until we get to the end of the wire and make sure everything is nicely twisted together. If you want, you can adjust the twist a little bit with your tools, but right now I'm going to put this in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 to 55 minutes. I want to make sure everything is nice and baked. Now for our hooves, what we're going to do is we're going to start on the bottom of the hooves first. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll out some clay nice and flat and we're going to cut some circles from this. This is going to be the base of the bottom of the hoof and we're going to add some texture to it. After you add the texture to the bottom of the hoof, if you want, you can add a horseshoe to the bottom of this as well. Just take a strip of clay and kind of make a U shape. Make sure to push it into the clay and blend it together, and then you can add some texture and details to it, like adding little nail holes and stuff like that. After that, I'm going to clean up my edges, just kind of shrink everything up a little bit, and then we're going to bake this at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 20-25 minutes. After those are out of the oven and have cooled, what we're going to do is we're going to start on the sides of the hoofs. So what we need to do is we need to make a base for the middle of the hoof, that way we have something to build off of. So I'm going to use some lumps of tinfoil and I'm going to be gluing this to the bottom of our hoof. Once we have our tinfoil glued to the bottom of our hoof, what we can do is we can now take some strips of clay and start building up the sides of the hoof. So we're just going to kind of wrap the clay around and then blend it into the bottom of the hoof. Lastly, we need to add some texture to the sides, so I'm going to add some little line works and then just kind of rough it up a bit. Then we need to put these back in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 minutes. At this point, our horn should be done baking and nice and cool, and now we can start on our head. Okay, so for making the head, we're going to take our glass container and a lump of tinfoil that we roughly shaped into what we want our head to look like. We're going to put our tinfoil on top of the glass container and start covering everything in our clay. We're going to use strips of clay for this and just wrap it all around and then blend everything together. Once we have everything blended together, we can start roughly shaping it to get the right shape for the head. If we need to add clay, we can add it. If we need to take clay away, we can do that as well. Once we like the shape of the head, we can start adding our eyes to the face and adding a bunch more detail. So I'm going to take some balls of clay, they're nice and even, and I'm going to push them onto the face where I want the eyes to go. Then I'm going to take the eyes that I want to use for the piece. The eyes that I'm using for this piece are made out of resin. I poured them myself, and I have a whole video on how I made them. If you want to watch that, I'll leave a link in the description for it. But if you want to use glass eyes, you can use those, or you could just use clay and sculpt the eyes out of that. So I'm going to take my resined eyes and I'm going to push them into those balls of clay, and we're going to make sure they're nice and even. Just double check from different angles to make sure that you have them in the right spot. And then we can start adding clay around them to make the eyelids and building up the face around them. If you guys are curious, the type of style that I'm trying to go for this is something similar to how carousel horses look. I kind of like the bug-eyed and the just dramatic features of everything, so I'm going really big eyes, little mouth, just trying to make it look a little bit more cartoonsy, so it's not going to be like a perfect representation of what a horse would look like. It's a fantasy creature, I can change the proportions here and there if I want to, and I just wanted to make something look really cute. So that's why I have the eyes a little bit more bugged out and the shape of the face is a little bit off for a horse. Once we're done with the eyes and the detail around them, we can start sculpting the nose and the mouth. For the nostrils, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thumbs and I'm just going to stick them right into the end of the snout, just to kind of lay out where I want the nostril holes to go, and then I'm going to use my tools to kind of refine the shape. Now for the mouth, normally what I do for horses is I like to take a bit of clay and use it for the upper lip and just kind of blend it into the rest of the face. That way the lip kind of sticks out a little bit more. But I really didn't want a large upper lip for my unicorn. I kind of wanted something a little bit more dainty. So I'm going to use the clay that's currently on the face and just kind of draw out the shape of the mouth and then kind of refine the shape of the lips with the clay that I have available. So I'm not going to add anything. If anything, I'm taking clay away for this. And then once we're done with the details of the face, we like how everything looks, we're going to take this off of the glass container by cleaning up the edges around the base of the head and just removing any excess clay that we don't need, that way the head isn't overly heavy. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to take that horn that we made earlier and push it into the forehead of the horse. So we're just going to take it, make sure we push it in nice and evenly, and we make a nice deep indent for adding it later. So just make sure that your indent is nice and deep and just be careful not to mess up the rest of the face while you're doing this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our clay head, put it in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45, maybe 55 minutes. It's quite large, so you want to make sure to bake it all the way through. And then once all of our clay pieces have cooled to touch, we can start on our painting. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a gray and we're going to go around the eyes and go into the cracks of the nose and the mouth. The main reason I want to do this is I want to make the eyes a little bit darker around it, and we're going to fade this to a kind of pinkish color for the skin. While I'm painting around the eyes, I'm going to be careful not to get any paint on the resined eyes. You can peel it off if you want, but it's kind of a pain to peel it off of resin. It's a lot easier to peel it off of glass, so I'm just going to avoid painting over the resined eyes as best I can and just go all the way around them. And then after we have all the gray in place, we're going to start taking some pinks and whites and different things like that to make a skin color. Now I'm actually going to be furring the face of our unicorn, but because I'm going with the classic color of white, a lot of the color of the clay is going to peek through when we add the fur trimmings onto this. So I want to have like undertones that are going to peek through the fur instead of having the color of the clay peek through the fur. So it'll give it a cool effect of being fuzzy and everything, but you'll still get the kind of undertones from doing all the painting. So that's why I'm doing pinks and mixing in a little bit of white here and there. That way I kind of imitate the color of the skin that would be underneath the fur. I also thought it'd be fun to add a little bit of khaki color to the top of the nose, just making a few spots here and there. I'm not doing any kind of pattern or anything. If you want, you could, but I'm just going random with it. Now for painting the horn, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be primering it with a white paint first, letting all of that dry, and then we're going to add some colors to it with some metallic paints. I have this really cool metallic acrylic set from Arteza, and I'm going to be using these colors to paint the horn. For the colors of the horn, I decided that I wanted to use two colors, so I'm going to go over one of the spirals of the horn with blue, and the other one is going to be of a lighter kind of purpley pink color. I really liked how these two colors looked together. It kind of reminded me of cotton candy, and for some reason when I think of unicorns, I think of cotton candy at the same time. No idea why, I thought it would just look cute. And then after I got the painting done for the horn, what we're going to do is we're actually going to add a little bit of extra detail to it. So what I did is I mixed up some resin and I painted over the whole surface of the horn. I let it cure for a little bit so it wasn't runny, but it was still sticky, and then I took some glitter and I sprinkled it over the whole surface. I went with a white holographic glitter because I thought it'd work well over both of the colors, and I didn't have to try and do two different colors over the two different spots because sprinkling two different colors in a spiraling effect probably would not have worked out. So I just went with one color that I knew would let both of the colors shine through. And then once I had the horn completely covered in glitter, I set it off to the side somewhere safe to continue curing. Because resin tends to take about 48 hours to cure completely, so I have to have it somewhere safe where nothing's going to get stuck to it. Okay, now we're going to start painting the hooves. So I'm going to start by primering them with a white, and then I'm going to go over the whole thing with a gray. Then I'm going to take my metallic paints again. I'm going to use some of the darker colors like a dark gray or black, and I'm going to go over the gray portions of this as well. For the edge of the hoof, I decided to go with a more silver to kind of make it stand out a little bit, and then for the horseshoe, I decided to go with the same blue color that we used on the horn. So I'm going to paint up all four of the hooves, get all the paint nice and dry, and I'm going to resin over these as well. I'm not going to add glitter, I just want to have a protective coating over them. And then while everything is curing and drying, we can start on the sewing. Okay, so I have a pattern all drawn up for a unicorn, and this is what we're going to use to make the body. Now, ever since I started making reptiles, I started having the legs separate instead of part of the main body pattern, and I really liked how that looked. I ended up trying it with my owlbear, and I really like that as well, so I'm going to continue doing the same thing, having the legs separated when we have furred patterns and stuff as well. So the first thing that we're going to start sewing is going to be the body. So I'm going to take the left and the right, and I'm going to sew down the belly. We need to leave the back open for putting everything together. And then we're going to take the legs and we're going to sew down the fronts of those only. We're not going to sew down the back, similar to why we didn't sew down the back of the body. We need it open so we can put everything together. So I'm going to do this to the front legs and the back legs. And then I'm going to take the two pieces for the tail and we're going to sew these together and flip them right side out so we have a little tiny tail to go at the end of the butt. And then after all that sewing, we're going to take the piece of fabric for the body and we're going to slide it over a wire frame. I made a very simple one that's kind of reinforced, that way it can hold up the head, and we're just going to slide it over after cutting some holes for the wires of the legs. We're then going to take our clay head and we're going to glue this to the wire for the neck, and then we can glue the fabric for the neck around the base of the head. As you can see, I made the head a little bit too large for the pattern, but that's normal. I usually go a little bit too large. I wait until I know how large I went over, and then I make a little triangle to fill the gap. Then we're going to stuff the rest of the body and close everything up. Once we get to the end, we're going to leave a very small hole and we're going to use this to sew the tail onto the back. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get this fur under control, so I'm going to start shaving the sides of our unicorn and just kind of making sure to get everything a little bit less fluffy so it's easier to add the legs and it adds a bit more shape to the body. Once we have the body trimmed up, we can take the fabric for the legs and start sewing them in place. Now this part will be a little bit difficult because there's no guide to follow. You're just going to have to kind of go a little slow and make sure to get the legs nice and even. But basically the inside part of the leg is going to be sewn under the wire, and then the outside part of the leg is going to be sewn over the wire. I'm going to get this done to all four of the legs, and then what we can do is we can take the hooves that we made and we can start adding them to the wire frame. So I'm going to take the wires that are sticking out of the base of the hoof, and we're going to take a smaller 20 gauge wire and we're going to start wrapping this onto the wire for the leg. We're going to make sure they're nice and secure, and then we can start gluing the fabric for the legs around the base of the hoofs. And give those some time to dry, and then we're going to stuff and close up the back of all the legs. And then once you have all the legs stuffed and closed up, we're going to start shaving them. So the main reason that we're shaving the legs is to make them look a little thinner and to define the shape of them more. While I was doing this, I decided to go back and shave the sides of the unicorn as well, just a little bit more. Okay, so we're getting close to finishing. We have the body all done. Now we need to finish up the face. So I'm going to start by adding some more fur to the face and just kind of covering up some good portions of it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make some ears. For the ears, I'm going to take 2 pieces of felt. We're going to take a white felt and then a kind of skin color felt. And we're going to be gluing these together with a wire frame in the middle. The main reason I'm adding a wire frame to this isn't really for it to be posable, it's mainly so that the ears can stand up. Once those are done, we can add those to the face. I have some holes that I made when we sculpted the face, and we're just going to glue them right into those holes. After we have those in place, I'm going to add a little bit more fur around them to kind of hide the seams, and then I'm going to kind of trim up the fur that we currently have on the face. Okay, now we need to fur the rest of the face. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some fabric glue and we're going to kind of brush it over the surface of the face. You can do it piece by piece instead of doing the whole face at once, it's just kind of easier. And then we're going to use fur trimmings from the fur that we used for the body, and we're going to sprinkle it over the surface where we have the glue. Okay guys, and that's how I made a unicorn. I had so much fun with this project. The pattern was a lot of fun as well, and I can't wait to work with more of my fur fabrics. If you guys have any other fur type creatures that you want to see me make, let me know down below in the comment section. Love to see you guys' ideas. I'm going to have him along with a bunch of other creatures in my Etsy shop, so if you want to buy anything, make sure to check the links down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!